Recently dismissed Tennessee football player Boo Carter speaks out. He gives his side to the saga.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Tuesday morning Locked On Vols. I am your host, Cain, a member of the VolQuest.com team here in town covering your Tennessee Volunteers. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one podcasting network available where it's your team every single day. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols a part of your morning routine, your first watch, your first listen each and every single day. Every dayers, I'll answer some mailbag questions coming up in segment number 3. But before that, we'll look at the Florida Gators, some of the stats, anomalies for this football team, and see what Tennessee's getting into. But of course, we're going to talk about the latest developments in the Boo Carter, Josh Heupel Tennessee football saga that is kind of taking over the news cycle here early in the week. Today's episode is presented by our great friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Give a shout out to and go check out FanDuel.com here today. So again, it was Boo Carter who was dismissed from the Tennessee football team. That came Sunday afternoon. Boo Carter did not show up to Neyland Stadium on Saturday. Boo did not play a defensive snap against Oklahoma a couple weeks ago. He's really not been that big of a factor. I mean, he's been returning punts, but they haven't really, or he's not been returning them, or they haven't let him return them, whatever. He's been out there for the most part, but he hasn't been much of an impact, what I'm trying to say, for Tennessee for quite some time. Obviously, this goes back to July. No showing for some team activities, had to earn his way back on the team, had to earn his way back in the rotation. That took pretty much all of August. Hasn't started a football game this year. Jalen McMurray's been your primary star for Tennessee. Again, this is not just something that came out of the blue this weekend. This has been building and building and building for quite some time, and we've talked about it a lot here on this show. Boo Carter spoke with John Bryce at Football Scoop, and I'll put the link in the show notes so you can go read the entire article. I'm gonna read part of it here. Some of the quotes he said to Football Scoop. It's a free story, so everybody can read it. And I'll certainly link the URL in the show notes so you can check out the whole thing. But he spoke with John Bryce over Football Scoop, and he gave his side to the story. Boo Carter tells Football Scoop, quote, I told them throughout the week, the Tennessee coaching staff, that my hip flexor was still messed up. Friday, they told me just to go home, and that was that. I had a meeting before we had film, before we leave for the hotel. This will be on Friday. Me and Heupel had a meeting, met with Coach Banks, Coach Nez, Willie Martinez, and Coach Hype. They told me that from this point on, all they said was go home, and we'll reach out to you. He said, quote, I heard from them Sunday. Basically, they said, we are done. If you have any questions, you can talk with the administrator. Basically, they dismissed me from the team, kicked me off the team, basically, end quote. That is what Boo Carter had to say about how things went down between him and the University of Tennessee. Heupel, of course, he said after the game on Saturday when asked where's Boo Carter, what's going on, said he wasn't with the team. At the end of the day, there's a standard. You got to be, hold up to that standard. He didn't say this, but going back to what he said about Nico, nobody's bigger than the power T and all that. And Heupel said that's pretty much all that he's going to, say about that at the point in time. And he wasn't going to say that Boo Carter was off the team there before he had a chance to speak with Boo Carter directly, in my opinion, and inform him that he was no longer with the team. And, of course, Josh Heupel spoke to the media, react to a little bit of that on Monday, and we'll get to what Josh Heupel had to say on Monday here in just a moment. Boo Carter goes on in his conversation with John Bryce at Football Scoop. Quote, it was a great time at Tennessee, but the season ended short for me. I'll just say goodbye from that point on. To me, I'm confused. I don't really know what's going on about dismissed or the extra stuff he said in the media with me in the locker room or following the rules or standard. I've been doing everything I could. I told him I was hurt. He wanted me to play hurt throughout the whole season. I don't know. I don't know. How he's putting it is making it sound like the stuff happened in fall camp still has an impact in November, end quote. Goes on to give some quotes about what, he wants other programs to see in him, how excited he is for a new opportunity. And again, you can check out, and he talks about how much fun it was to play at Tennessee. So you can check out that full article over at footballscoop.com. But Boo Carter essentially saying he's hurt. That's why, that is why his season is cut short. Doesn't really understand why he was dismissed from the team. He did reference the stuff that happened back in July and saying that it's almost like that still has an effect in November. Yeah, it absolutely has an effect in November if you're not taking the steps to better yourself as a person, as a teammate. And again, from what it feels like, that's not been the case. So again, I mean, I wish Boo Carter nothing but success, and I hope he succeeds somewhere else. Hope he goes somewhere else and balls out and grows and turns into a great football player, great young man, and all that and more. I never wish for the downfall on anybody, but it just didn't work out here at the University of Tennessee. And Tennessee, enough was enough on Saturday this weekend, really on Sunday, and they informed Boo Carter of his dismissal from the program. Now, is that a decision that Josh Heupel regrets? Giving players second chances. He gave Boo Carter a second chance in July, allowed him to come back on the team, earn his way back. That's why he missed a lot of fall camp and all that. Is there any regret there in giving Boo Carter a second chance, knowing that it eventually didn't work out? And secondly, at the tail end, he goes on to be asked about the injury reports. I should have made these into two clips. I'm sorry. He's asked about the injury reports and if Boo Carter should have been on the injury reports the last month for SEC games. And the very end of this, he'll have a unique little answer to that. So again, here's Josh Heupel. First and foremost, ask about does he regret giving him a second chance, and then secondly, answering if he should have been on the injury report.
No, not regretful. At the end of the day, it's our job as coaches to try to help mold these guys, and that's a part of the commitment that you make, in the recruiting process and when they decide to come. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and at the end of the day, we're moving forward. No, sir. Not based on our trainers.
So there at the end, again, the question was, should he have been on the injury report? Because, Boo Carter, his side of things saying that he's hurt, can't play. Should he be on the injury report? Josh Heupel says, no, sir. Long pause. Not based on our trainers, end quote. That's kind of all he had to say about that. So, again, this has been drama for quite some time. It's been drama since back in the summer. It's been drama at points in time throughout the year. And I don't mean this to be rude. Boo's just not been a factor for Tennessee this year. And it's unfortunate because he is such a dynamic football player. He's so talented. And again, he's going to go somewhere and he's going to succeed. There's going to be a mailbag question coming up later in the show asking me about kind of where I could see him going, not specifically like the team, if you will. I know there's some potential landing spots out there right now. But he's going to go somewhere and be successful if, he does the things he needs to and he's presented with the right opportunities. I mean, he's a good football player. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. And so it certainly did not work out here at Tennessee. Josh Heupel references the standard. Everybody's got to reach a standard to be a part of this football program. Says that he clearly, not according to the trainers, should have been on the injury report, the availability report. Boo Carter's coming out saying that he's too hard to play. So clearly two sides of the story here. But at the end of the day, it's not like any of this matters. He's not a part of the football team. He's not been a factor for Tennessee all year long. But that is the end of the Boo Carter chapter at the University of Tennessee. Josh Heupel will never be asked about Boo Carter ever again in a public setting. So again, as he ended that quote, we're moving on. And we will hear as well on Locked On Vols. When we come back, we'll look at the Florida Gators. What makes this Florida team challenging, if anything, and what must Tennessee do to accomplish something it hasn't done since 2003? That is coming up next as we continue on here. It's your Tuesday morning Locked On Vols. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than over at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps everything more exciting, every game more exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, incredible offer to new customers over at FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers get $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. New customers get $300. FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It's a pretty good deal. You should take advantage of that. So head on over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. FanDuel, it is where you can make every single moment more. That's FanDuel. And on the FanDuel safe, secure, easy-to-use app, that's FanDuel. So Tennessee takes on Florida down in the swamp, looking for its first win in Gainesville since 2003, or a span of 8,099 days. 8,099 days, 22 years, 1 month, or 8,099 days. How about that? So we'll see if Tennessee can accomplish that. Obviously, again, as I said yesterday, Florida's 3-7, they're 2-5 in league play. Just throw that out. Do yourself a favor, throw that out. That does not matter because you know Florida is going to bring everything it possibly can bring to the University of Tennessee. This is the first home game Florida's had in over a month. This is the first home game Florida will have without head coach Billy Napier. This is the first home game where the Lane talk, the Lane Kiffin talk, Lane from Ole Miss to Florida seems, very, very real. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I mean, there's a lot of believers out there. So, we had our friends from, Gators Online over on the Rocky Top Rewind the other night, and pretty much they made a good point in terms of, sometimes when you get rid of the guy that nobody wants, you start to heal as a fan base. You start to come together a little bit. It feels like Florida's fan base is kind of coming together. Now, you're still losing. You're 3-7, but man, Florida's played a lot of close football games, a ton of close football games, and it had a really good defense to begin the season. 3 of the last 5 ball games, Florida has allowed 30 points or more to be scored, but there's been some close losses in there. I mean, you look at the schedule for the Florida Gators. Of course, earlier in the year, they lost by 10, turning the football over 5 times, including 1 pick six to USF. That's the worst loss on the schedule. Or that was LSU. The worst loss on the schedule was to USF at home, 18-16. You lost by 10 in Baton Rouge, turning it over 5 times, including 1 pick six to LSU. You lost 26-7 to Miami. That wasn't a close game. You beat Texas 29-21. You lost by 2 touchdowns to Texas A&M on the road, 34-17. You beat Mississippi State by 2 at 23-21. You lost by 4 to Georgia at 24-20. You lost by 10, 34-24 to Ole Miss, and a game that you played really, really well. But the anomaly in this is the Kentucky game. And Kentucky won 38-7. It felt like that's the game where Florida just flat out quit. And that's the one that I don't quite understand. Here's a really interesting stat about the Florida Gators, and I think this is a key pivotal stat that we're going to carry throughout the rest of the week. Florida is a pretty solid first-half football team. 71 points scored in the first quarter, 73 points scored in the second quarter. Boy, it dips down a whole lot as the game goes along. 37 points scored this season in the third quarter, and only 27 points scored in the fourth quarter this year. Florida's played 10 games. That's essentially 4 touchdowns in 10 games. 4 touchdowns in 10 games in the fourth quarter. That is horrendous. Want to know even what's worse than that? Opponents are outscoring Florida 75-27 in the fourth quarter of football games. 75-27 in the fourth quarter of football games. That's unreal. That is unreal. Florida's got so much talent. The talent conversation of Florida has never really been that deep of a conversation. They've got tons of talent. One of the top 5 talent-wise rosters in the Southeastern Conference. The issue was I thought they had a bad football coach, and now they're just losing and don't really know how to finish games, and certainly turnovers have been a massive issue for Florida on the offensive end. You look at what DJ Lagway has done. DJ Lagway leads the SEC with 13 interceptions. 13 interceptions. Florida has 17 turnovers so far on the season. Florida's offense has just been abysmal. 20.8 points per game. That ranks 15th in the league. 339 yards of total offense a game. That ranks 15th in the league. Average 217 yards through the air. That ranks 12th. They average 122 yards on the ground. That ranks 13th. Again, 17 turnovers so far, 13 of which have come via interceptions from DJ Lagway. They've allowed 16 sacks on the offensive line. 33% on third down offensively. Compare that, Tennessee is 51%, I believe, or 47%. They scored 19 touchdowns on 30 red zone trips. I love this stat. I don't think I shared it on yesterday's show, but Florida has scored 19, yawning. Florida scored 19 touchdowns on 30 red zone trips. Tennessee has scored 37 touchdowns on 51 red zone trips. That's 73% compared to the 63% for Florida. But here's the interesting part of that. Again, Florida has reached the red zone 30 times offensively. Tennessee has scored 37 red zone touchdowns. So Tennessee has scored 7 more times in the red zone than Florida's even reached the red zone. I think that's a pretty telling. I think that's a pretty telling stat. Again, Lagway, not a good year so far, averaging below 200 yards passing. He's thrown for 1,900 yards, 12 touchdowns, those 13 picks, completing 63% of his passes. They are going to run him a little bit more, I think. Billy Gonzalez, I think they've been running DJ Lagway a little bit more, so Tennessee's obviously going to have to be on the lookout for that. Jaden Ball, I think, is a pretty good tailback. He's got 808 yards on the season, 164 attempts, 6 touchdowns, averaging 4.9 yards per carry. They've had a lot of injuries at wide receiver, but Eugene Trey Wilson III is still there. Dallas Wilson's a good player. They had a transfer from, Cal and USC, I believe, and Michael Stravant. Vernell Brown III has done some things. So again, they've got a lot of receivers, but none of those guys have really been healthy at the same time this season. At least that's what it feels like on paper. They've also got 3 tight ends who have scored touchdowns in this season. They've got Hayden Henson, who's the starting tight end. He scored a touchdown. Tony Livingston's his backup. He has 8 catches, 1 touchdown. And then Amir Jackson has 3 catches, 1 touchdown on the year. You look at the defense for the Florida Gators, and again, it started off pretty strong, but it's kind of slid here lately. They ranked 12th in the league with 23.6 points per game, 366 yards of defense. That's 13th in the league. They allow 233 through the air. That's 11th best in the league, 223 on the ground. That's 13th in the league. I have that wrong, obviously. I've got it right here. Florida allows 223 through the air, and Florida allows 143 on the ground. 143 on the ground. So I'm going to make that quick change right here. Okay, 143 on the ground. They do have 15 takeaways, which is not a bad number whatsoever. They convert, or they're holding opponents to 41% on third down, holding opponents to 52% in the red zone in terms of touchdowns. They've sacked the quarterback 21 times, and they've tallied 50 TFLs on the season. So, again, those numbers are not very good. Tennessee's numbers are clearly better than that. Ole Miss last weekend rushed for 240 yards against the Gators. 240 yards against the Gators. So you'd hope that there's some opportunity there for Deshaun Bishop to go ahead and get out there and do some things. The secondary, for bad defenses, I don't want to call this a bad defense, but for not very productive defenses throughout the course of the season, the secondary is typically kind of your tackle leaders. That's kind of the case here. You have Miles Graham, a linebacker that leads the team with 60 tackles, but tackler 2, 3, and 4 all in the secondary with Jordan Castell, Bryce Thornton, those safeties, your star player, and Sharif Denson. Got a couple of cornerbacks who have made some plays. So, again, this is nothing super impressive about this Florida Gators football team. But I do think it's interesting how they're not a very good finishing football team. They've held leads in the fourth quarter against Ole Miss, and I want to say against Georgia as well. They just can't find a way to finish. Tennessee, if Florida gets out to an early lead, don't panic. Don't panic. No, Florida's not been a good four-quarter football team this season, and continue to chip away. I think if Tennessee can get up by a couple of scores, and I know that's easier said than done. I'm not calling for that to happen because I think that's going to be a challenge. But I think if Tennessee were to get up by a couple of scores in the first half, maybe this Florida team rolls over kind of like it did against Kentucky. Who's to say? Mailbag questions coming up when we return right here on Locked On Vols Everydayers. Interesting one that I'm excited about. Wants to compare Indiana to Tennessee if they flip-flop. Tennessee plays in the SEC. Tennessee in the Big Ten, Indiana in the SEC, and what those records would look like. That's coming up next as we continue on here. It is your Tuesday morning. Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. We do it every Tuesday right here on Locked On Vols. Your mailbag questions from you everydayers. Can't thank you enough for making this show what it is and sending in these questions each and every week. Not as many questions this week. I don't know what's going on. It's almost like this, it's almost like you're playing New Mexico State this week. Come on, guys. This is Florida week. I thought we'd have a little bit more questions, but that's okay. You guys can always send me some questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Let's start with Robo22. Said, all right, Cainer, got a fun hypothetical question for you. Flip Tennessee to Big Ten and Indiana to the SEC and give them each other's schedules this year, both home and away. What's the record at the end of the season? I'm only going to do half this one because I got to be honest with you. I have not watched one Indiana football game this year. I have no clue how good they are. I see the metrics and all that and the strength of schedule and the efficiency ratings and all that. I know about Carlos Mendoza, or not Carlos, or whatever the quarterback's name is, getting a whole lot of NFL draft love. He's had a really good year, the transfer from Cal. He's had a really, really good year. But I don't know much about Indiana because I cover Tennessee football and I don't get to watch as much football as I want throughout the weekend, which kind of stinks. But I have not watched one down of Indiana football this year, unfortunately. So I'm going to answer it in terms of Tennessee and the Big Ten. I hope that's okay. You look at Indiana's schedule. First and foremost, let's do this first. I pulled up the Big Ten standings. And oh my gosh, I mean, like, I know it's bad. Don't get me wrong. Like, I know it's bad, but it's just so bad. Like, anybody that wants to make the argument, and I'm not going to get on this soapbox here today, but I'll just be quick and I'll say it right here. Anybody that wants to make the argument that the Big Ten is a stronger, tougher conference than the SEC, either, I think it's more so just pushing an agenda, pushing a narrative. Because you can't be that silly or that obtuse. Look at the Big Ten standings. You got some really good teams at the top. Indiana's 8-0 in conference, 11-0 overall. Ohio State is 10-0, 7-0 in conference. USC is 8-2, 6-1 in conference. That's a respectable football team. Oregon is 9-1 overall, 6-1 in conference. Michigan is 8-2, 6-1. That's respectable. Then you have a massive dip. I mean, a massive dip in the rest. You get into the Iowas, the Washingtons, the Minnesotas, the Illinois, the Nebraskas, and we're talking the Iowas that's 6-4 overall, 4-3 in conference play. Washington's that's 7-3 overall, 4-3 in conference play. The Minnesotas that's 6-4, 4-3. The Illinois that's 7-3, 4-3. The Nebraska that's 7-3, 4-3. I mean, again, we're talking massive drop off here. Indiana's a good football program. Ohio State's a good football program. USC is solid. Oregon is good. Michigan's solid. Iowa's not very good. We know about Iowa. So that's what? How many teams? 1, 2, 3, 4. That is 5. That is 5 football teams. What did we just see from the Southeastern Conference this past year? Maybe that's more of an indictment on Shane Beamer, but you had a team that was up 30-3 and you lost because the quality it's just so much deeper in this league. Now, South Carolina should have never lost that game, but Texas A&M is a good football program. Oklahoma handed Alabama its second loss of the season. Alabama, arguably the best team in the country entering this past week. Georgia has 1 loss on the year. That's to Alabama. Texas began the season preseason ranked number 1. Obviously was overhyped in that regard, but battle back was pretty solid football team. I know they've got 3 losses now. Let's see how they end the year, but I think they're going to beat Mizzou this weekend. Then I don't know who they got to end the year, but Texas showed some resiliency. Missouri's down to its 3rd-string quarterback, and still it's a pretty good football team. We know about Tennessee. I mean, again, the conversation goes on and on and on. You have Kentucky that's scoring points all of a sudden. You've got even the worst teams in the Southeastern Conference, Arkansas and Mississippi State. What can those 2 teams do? That they're not winning much, but they score a ton of points. They take teams like Tennessee to the brink. They take teams like Florida to the brink. I know Florida's not that very good this year. They give some of these teams more than they want to handle. You're just not getting that from the Big Ten. The Big Ten is just, oh my gosh, Purdue 0-8 in conference, Michigan State 0-7 in conference, Wisconsin, Penn State, Maryland all 1-6 in conference, Rutgers 2-5, UCLA's 3-4, as is Northwestern. And then, of course, all those 4-3 teams I mentioned earlier. So, again, I know I just coming on a tangent there, but I have no time. You're either pushing an agenda. You are pushing an agenda because you can't be that obtuse, in my opinion. You look at Indiana's schedule. How would Tennessee fare? Against Kennesaw State and the Fighting Jerry Max, Tennessee would win. Against Indiana State, the Sycamores, Tennessee would win. Against Illinois, the Brett Bielemas, Tennessee would win. That game was on the road, by the way. Or no, it wasn't. That was at home. At Iowa, Tennessee would win that football game because Iowa can't score. In Eugene, that'd be tough. I'm going to put that as a loss right now. But that might be the only loss on the schedule. In Bloomington, that's a home game. Against Michigan State, Tennessee's winning. Against UCLA and the Fighting Nico Iamaleavas, that's a Tennessee win. On the road in College Park against Maryland, that's a Tennessee win. Against this Penn State team, especially, through midway through the month of October, Tennessee wins that game for sure. That's on the road as well at University Park. Against Wisconsin and the Badgers, Tennessee runs out of that one for sure. Runs away with that one. And then against Purdue, who again is winless in Big Ten play, Tennessee wins that one. So given Indiana's schedule, I think Tennessee goes 11-1. And I don't think it's even close. Whereas if Indiana, which I think is a good football team with a pretty solid quarterback and all that, you have Indiana playing Tennessee's schedule, and it could obviously lose to Alabama. It could lose to Georgia. It could lose to Vanderbilt. It could lose to Oklahoma. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 losses there potentially for Indiana, just because the league is so much better. So, anyway, I spent way too much time on that question. I do apologize, but man, there's good teams in the Big Ten. There's 5 of them. A couple of really good teams, but there's 5 of them. The rest of the 24 teams or whatever's in that conference, just not good. Just not good at all. Robo, appreciate the time there in the question. Go to Tyler. Assuming one quarterback will enter the portal, will we operate with 2 scholarship quarterbacks again this upcoming year? I feel like in the past it took away a phase of the running game with the quarterback when you don't have depth there. No, I think they're going to have 3 scholarship quarterbacks. It was a little bit different in years past, like Joe Milton, Nico. You had Gaston Moore, which he was kind of like a scholarship quarterback. He was just such a veteran in this league. Last year, you had Jake Merklinger. Technically, you had 2 scholarship quarterbacks last year. You had Jake Merklinger, who was a freshman. You had Nico, and then Gaston was your backup. But again, Gaston's kind of a different story. They will have 3 scholarship quarterbacks, especially with the 2 young guys that they're being just, or say if either Merck or GMAC were to leave, you still have 2 young guys because it would be phase on with either GMAC or phase on with either Merck. All young, super inexperienced. So you'd have to get another guy for sure. And I do feel like it takes away the phase of the run game a little bit because you don't want to get anybody hurt. But typically you want to take care of your quarterback regardless. Tennessee's never had just a true runner in that regard, if you will. All right, we got one more question, I believe. Yeah, we got one more question. And this is from Jake. Jake says, do you think Boo Carter will have a lot of opportunities from Power 5 schools? He has talent, but he's shown to be a me, not a team player, and how hesitant would teams be to sign him to NIL money with his track record? I certainly think that there's some hesitation there, given how it happened here at Tennessee, but sometimes all you need is a fresh start. Sometimes all you need is a different landscape and all that. And I hope for Boo Carter's sake he gets that and he's successful. I really do. I do think there'll be some hesitancy towards in that regard from some schools, but he's going to go Power 4, and he's going to sign a big NIL deal. You know why? Because he can play football, and he's a good football player. And how many times do we see every April NFL draft, throughout the draft process and the combine and the pro days and all the talking heads, and it just takes one player for that GM or that player of director of player personnel or that head coach to fall in love with, director of football operations, guy in the scouting department. It takes one player for them to fall in love with. They say, well, I understand he's not been successful there or there, but I can fix him. I can coach him up. I can fix him. And so, there's going to be a lot of that there. Boo Carter can play football. He is a good football player. And so I would be shocked if he's not playing Power 4 football next year, albeit where? I don't know. That'll be interesting. Typically when players leave Tennessee, I don't really care, but obviously I want to see where they land. But I will be interested to see kind of where that happens. Remember, the transfer portal does not officially open for football until January the 2nd, whatever that is. So we got a little while before we even see any of that. All right, that's going to do it here for today's edition of Locked On Vols. Don't forget, tomorrow, hope to have a crossover show with you guys. Brandon also Locked On Gators. If that's the case, we'll push Josh Ward to Thursday. Ward Wednesday on a Thursday. Hope to get Noah Taylor back on the show this week. Talk about a Tennessee-Florida game in the past, and do that for Throwback Thursday. We'll have Boogie on Friday. We got loads and loads of content to get into here this week on Locked On Vols. It is Gator Hater Week. Big week. Tennessee football takes on Florida. Hopefully a win down there for the first time since 2003. And Gonna have a blast previewing all that right here on the show. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols a part of your morning routine, your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. Every dayers could not do this show without you. Same time, same place. We'll do it again tomorrow, everybody. This is Locked On Vols.